topic is sprawl. So I'm going to start with you, Ed. Give me some good advice on dealing with sprawl.
Implement an automated internal and external asset discovery process.
What are the different types of sprawl we're dealing with here?
Well, I mean, there's kind of the traditional technical asset sprawl, whether that be on-prem assets in a closet, rogue IT assets, or in the cloud or wherever. There's also sprawl in terms of access and services, right? Things that used to run and no longer need to run that are still running. I kind of think of sprawl happens because in the end, we ultimately just never like to turn anything off. Whenever you start to add categories of things, you'll start to see more sprawl of it. Cloud, SaaS, infrastructure as a service, all of these things, we're seeing tons of sprawl in that area. But also, as I mentioned, if you're in healthcare, manufacturing, and you start to implement, you've got all these IoT devices and various kinds of IoT devices and things that just never die. We're seeing a lot of sprawl associated with that.
You have software sprawl. When you get rid of a old piece of software and you're moving to a new one, it constantly grows. But the one that I realized when we were talking about this that no one ever talks about is data sprawl. And data sprawl is probably the most impactful one for government. We're strapped for resources in a variety of places, and things like the content on your website may have content that's really old, and people are using that content now to be able to social engineer the environment. Not only do you have that risk of social engineering, but you also have the risk that the data now exists in more places. So when someone says, hey, where's all of this data at in your organization? The answer is, we don't know.
Dustin Sachs asks, how can we in security influence business to not create sprawl in an but I need it world?
I don't think it's a security problem as much as an all IT problem. Right? It's really partnering with the business and making them really understand that we're there to support where they're going from a business perspective. I think if we put all of it on the shoulder of cybersecurity, it's going to fall flat, right?
Security teams in general are not provisioned size-wise to be able to actually be the front lines of security for all the company, right? So you need to involve the people within the business, within ops, within development, within marketing, wherever the front line is. Not only are you going to be more successful, but they probably know a lot more about the thing that is coming in than the actual security person that's going to sit the third tier back from what's going on.
That leads to a great question from Matthew Bybee. What are some practical steps and who do security leaders need to actually interact with to try to get ahead of business or technology modernization? Like where are you inserting yourself in the conversation before essentially sprawl starts happening?
The follow-up question to that then is where in the business is this being led from, right? Because every business might be a little bit different depending on what it is that you guys do. But if marketing is out in front and they're the ones that are front and center in terms of the high priority projects and provisioning new things, then focus there.
Every business unit functions as almost a different business under the umbrella where there's different strategic plans and they're driving towards different goals. We find that we inject ourselves in the procurement cycle, but we also need to engage with every level of the organization. We realize that we could speak to the senior leadership and they don't understand what to do when something happens. So what we started to do was we created an education campaign where we're connecting with them. There's no doubt if a fire breaks out in your business, everyone knows what to do with that red box that sits in a wall, right? They pull the fire alarm. And the reality is, if we're not getting that information out from the senior level of the organization all the way to the rank and file, and they don't know how to pull to get an output that they're expecting, you're going to run into these problems all day.
Ferd asks this question. Which ITIL/business processes should security hook into to get sprawl under control? Is there, like, if you could latch yourself to one business process, I guess, if you will, that could best get this under control, what would it be, Ed?
Well, without being the expert on ITIL, I would say anything to do with provisioning, right? Anytime you're provisioning something, if security is involved in that, you'll have a much better chance of having a handle on it.
I think sprawl is no different than what we all do, right? We want to save things forever. And so what we need to do is be able to manage the risk where in many cases with data, letting go of the old and moving to the new is not as scary of a proposition. And once we start to do that and we start to partner with the business, we're going to have better results with handling sprawl.
In terms of sprawl, like everything else, baby steps and incremental improvements. If you are at 50%, set a goal to be at 60% by the end of this year, right? You're not going to get to perfection. Nobody ever does, but get better than where you are today.